Sometimes I have to make emergency stops. This was one. Welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. So how do I spot the problems on these hooves? Well, I look at the top first in the white line, look down toward the toe triangle on either side. I also check that typical sole ulcer site. That's where the majority of those problems are going to be. That white line looks good there, but there, I think that's going to be the problem. If we move over to the other side, we got the sole ulcer site looks good. The white line on the other side, that looks good as well. I'd say, yeah, definitely it's going to be over here. Okay, but how did you eliminate that other claw? Or were you sure it wasn't over there? Well, I couldn't have been 100% sure, but the vast majority of problems that we find, especially white line issues, are going to be on the medial claw, or that inside claw of the front feet, and it's going to be on the lateral claw, or the outside claw of the back feet. That's where the pressure that is applied to these claws, the majority of the pressures are applied on those two claws, and since these are pressure-related problems, it stands to reason that that's where we would find the problems. How do I know that this is an internal pressure-type problem, and not something that happened exterior, something that poked through the sole? See that little bit of redness in there? That's the dead giveaway. That redness, that's happening on the inside of the claw. You can see that little red dot there? That is actually where the lesion is going to be. But as that hoof grows out, that's where that bottom mark is. You'll see that it's kind of following its way up that foot, and eventually they're going to come together to right where that lesion is underneath. And there, we have hit pay dirt, or pay juice, as it were. Now, this is another clear sign that this is a pressure-related problem and not a puncture. Had it been a puncture, we would have expected that area, or that lesion, to be directly under that first black mark we found. However, it didn't. It ended up way up this claw, and that's because, like I said, as this mark had grown out over time, that's what made it lower on the hoof.
What made it go so bad so fast?
That was the farmer trying to figure out how a cow who was perfectly fine one day could almost not make it back in from the pasture the very next day. And the reason that is because of the pressure that builds up inside there. Even though this flaw was there for months, and even though it wasn't causing any problems for those months, once that corium became exposed to the outdoors, to the slurry and the mud and stuff, that was able to get inside there, the infection started to build, that pressure started to build, and then it became unbearable for her to walk on. That's what happens with these. Even though once we get this opened up, you're going to say, man, how could we have not seen this sooner? It's because they don't show it sooner. A lot of times you won't know anything's there until they start to show that lameness, and that's when we find these things. It may be hard to believe for owners that may not have hoofed animals, but if you've got a horse, you've got a goat, you've got a cow, and they get lame, you know that this is the case. One day they're perfectly fine, the next day they can't hardly walk, and you're convinced that there must be something stuck in there. Something has changed immediately, overnight, for this to happen. And in reality, the only thing that's changed is that it takes time for that bacteria to get in there and cause the problem. And that's what's happened here. The bacteria got in, that corium became inflamed, pressure started to build, and she no longer wanted to walk on it. Just gotta touch up these edges, and then we'll get that salicylic acid wrap in place. There's a hole in the sole and separation up above and something else in between. Welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. That something else is a pretty sizable rock. That explains that. Now we need to turn away the loose horn and examine the groove that's left behind. With the debris cleared away, it's time for a wash down. Now, even though there is some redness deposited throughout this hoof horn, this hoof is sound and no further complications are expected. The problem is going to be right here. Let's get started. Welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. Now, how many of you are thinking right now, why don't you just spray that entire area off before you start? Spray the whole foot off, scrub it clean. Well, there are multiple reasons why I'm not going to do that, least of which today is the fact that it's 10 degrees out. Now, what do you think would happen if I started spraying a lot of water in 10-degree weather? That's right, we have ice everywhere, and ice is extraordinarily dangerous for cows for obvious reasons. In fact, I go through great pains to make sure that there are no areas they might slip around my chute. You notice on the floor here, on this farm, we use straw, put it in and around my trailer. That's going to soak up any liquids that might freeze, and then it keeps the floor from being slippery. On a lot of farms, I may use sand, or I might also use sawdust. All for the same reasons. I want to soak up as much liquid as I can so it doesn't freeze to the floors. As I clean this hoof off with my grinder, it's going to be way cleaner than I could have ever gotten it with a water hose. Not to mention the fact that even if I did wash all these feet, and I could wash these feet, mixing water with power tools and sharp knives is not a wise thing. So, for those reasons, I don't wash feet. And the other reason is, you'll see right now, even if I had washed this foot, I couldn't possibly have gotten into all those crevices up inside that claw, which is where the actual problem is. I gotta get all that removed. Then I can get this thoroughly cleaned, and I'll do that at the end. Yes, that is this cow making that noise in the background, well, and some calves as well. But all that is she's just anxious about being in the chute. She doesn't know what's going on. At least that's my thought. Or that is just the fact that she's in the chute. You'll notice at the end, even when I'm done with all the trimming, she's still making that noise. So what exactly is this? Well, this is a white line defect. What does that mean? Well, it's a defect in the junction between the solar horn, the part on the bottom of her foot, and the wall horn, which is on the outside edge of her hoof. Two different types of hoof, they meet at that junction, and that's a common place for flaws to happen. When those flaws happen, it allows bacteria to get in there, and then you get areas of inflammation and infection, and that's what we got here. Now, what we got is two areas of dermatitis now inside there. That's not from two individual defects. What likely happened was that bottom mark is where this started, where there was a defect. As that horn then released to try to alleviate that problem, digital dermatitis was able to colonize on that exposed corium, and that's why I've got actually two different pockets, or two different areas here that look to be exposed to that. It's not two different individual problems. It's one problem that ended up being two different lesions in the end. You can see we got all of that loose horn removed, and even now, still spraying on this, there's still debris coming out of that. That's why you couldn't possibly get this clean at the beginning. That's why I wait till the end to do that. Now, yes, she does need a block on the other claw, so we're gonna get that on now, and we'll go back and we'll clean that area out some more. There's still a little bit of loose edges inside there I gotta clean out. We'll zoom in and get a good look at that once we get this block on. I put some glue on the side of that hoof as well before I put that block on. You'll see why when I put this foot down. Once we get this trimmed out, you're going to see there's still more stuff up inside there. Once again, by cleaning at the beginning is not going to get that clean. Another question I get all the time is this: why do you dab this dry before you put the salicylic acid on? Would it stick better if it was wet? And it may stick better, but what I don't want to have happen is that chlorhexidine to actually create a barrier for that salicylic acid to reach the lesion itself. The chlorhexidine does a good job at killing those surface bacteria, but it's the salicylic acid that gets inside there that really gets those bacteria that are further in. So I don't want there to be any chlorhexidine there when I apply that, so that salicylic acid can do its job. We'll get the salicylic acid wrap in place, and then you'll see, even when she's done with her trim, she's still fussing. Here you can see how adding that glue just adds more surface area for it to bind to. You're all done. You're all done. You're fine. And that's going to do it. If I don't see you before Christmas, enjoy the holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you all on the next one.